Follow the money. That's the catchphrase that was used popularly in the film version of All the President's Men. It was a good line for the film, but it's what many investigative journalists do. If you want to get to the center of power, influence, and sometimes corruption, you follow the money. That's what my guest on Truthout this week has done. He's Greg Palast. He's the author of Billionaires and Ballot Bandits. He's also conducted a series of investigations for BBC Television and for The Nation, and he has a new film out called Vultures and Vote Rustlers. It was released earlier in December, but it's actually out now on DVD. Hey, Greg, welcome to Truthout Interviews.
Glad to be with you, Ted.
You know, people who read Truthout, or really any newspaper, will know who the Koch brothers are, and they probably know who Christie is, too. In your article on Truthout, it's called Christie, Koch in Cahoots. It's time to subpoena the committee for our children's future. Now, this looks at the intersection of money and political influence. And first, let's get our viewers up to speed, because some of them may not know who this group is, which is Our Children's Future. That's the name of them. Who are they?
Yeah, I'd like to know. In fact, some subpoenas would help here. Okay, the Koch brothers, let's remember, are multi-gazillionaires. David and Charles are each worth about $22 billion. There's also a third Koch brother, by the way, Billy, who plays into this story, worth $3, $4, $5 billion. I think he's lost count. I have. So 3 Koch brothers are in this story. In addition, there is Christie, the governor of New Jersey. I've been investigating the Koch brothers, as you've said. Everyone seems to know about them now. But when I wrote a long investigation of them in 1998 for The Guardian, I called it The Richest Guys You've Never Heard Of. I was investigating them even earlier in coordination with the FBI. Now, that's kind of interesting. It's important for our story because it connects Christie and the Kochs in a way that I hope will get the attention of federal prosecutors. Last year, Christie was lauded in $6 million worth of ads by a group called Our Children's Future. Now, who were these people so concerned about children's future? Were they mommies? No. A so-called investigation by the New York Times, which doesn't follow the money, just simply called up Christie's office and a few front groups and said, who are these guys? And they were told, oh, it's just old chums of Christie who want to tell the world what a wonderful guy he is, old college chums. Well, he went to the University of Delaware. And yeah, the first ads were cheap, but eventually it was $6 million in ads. Now, as old UD fan, chums and roommates, I found out did not have the capability of finding $6 million in coins in their sofa cushions. So where did the $6 million come from? Well, as soon as I heard children's future, little alarm bells went off in my head, and I heard them ringing Koch, Koch, Koch. I went back to my old files. I have 7 volumes in my office, and in volume 3, there it was, Campaign for Our Children's Future. It was not a group created by Christie's old college chummies. It was, in fact, created by the Kochs. Now, how do I know that? Because the FBI and federal investigators were on that case. Back in 1996, Children's Future, in its first incarnation, dropped $25 million in ads into congressional races a week before the vote. Now, in 96, $25 million was nuclear. And they accused vulnerable Democrats, one of beating his wife, which was true, another of being a Jew, which was true, and another of consorting with a child molester. That was false. But the ads were effective. And the result was, despite the popularity of Bill Clinton as president, that Newt Gingrich remained the majority leader in the House of Representatives. That shocked everyone except the Kochs. Who was Children's Future? No one had any idea until investigators moved in, and it traced back to an operation called Triad, a front organization for Koch Industries. All of the money for Triad, which went then to Children's Future, which then went to the ads. All of it came from Koch Industries. Now, a little problem with that. This is in the days when America had a democracy, that is, before Citizens United. It was a felony crime, go to jail, breaking rocks on a chain gang crime for the Koch brothers to take money from their corporate kitty and through deceptive fronts put it into children's future. Now, fast forward, 2013, Christie's being pumped by David and Charles Koch and the third brother, Billy, who is joined with a set of billionaires who have joined together in a group called Restore Our Future. Now the new children's future, and we don't know who they are exactly. We don't accept what we can piece together. The reason is that they are a so-called social welfare organization, a charity under the IRS code, and they don't have to reveal who their donors are. Now, how do I know that there's a connection between the Kochs and Christie? This is where it gets interesting. But so children's future is, and I would like them to straighten me out if they think it's wrong. I've been trying to get their response on it, but it's pretty clearly the resurrection of the old criminal Koch front.
Let's sort of rewind a little bit to the 1996 election, which you talked about, and how that money, that $25 million, was used in smear ads to essentially keep Democrats out of office and for the Republicans to retain the majority.
Yes.
Fred Thompson, he's an actor. You probably see him on Law and Order and a number of films. He was also a Republican senator up until 2003. He investigated this connection between the Koch brothers and this, as he called it, a sham nonprofit corporation after the 1996 election. And he got his hand more than slapped by the party higher-ups, as it were.
It was the political equivalent of Islamic law, that is, of Sharia, where they cut his political hand off.
Yeah, I guess I was being a little too tame.
Senator Fred Thompson had been playing a prosecutor so often on television that he actually thought he was one. So despite the fact that he was a Republican, he went after the Koch brothers. He went after Triad and Children's Future and said, look, this is a sick front. He issued subpoenas on them. They refused congressional subpoenas. He called the Kochs and the rest of the gangsters to appear before his Government Operations Committee, which was investigating, and they told him to go fly. And when he pushed it further, when he said this is a dangerous front, and if we allow this, you can only imagine what will happen in the future. What happened with Fred Thompson is that Trent Lott, the Republican majority leader, stepped in, took away his powers of subpoena, shut down his committee before they could call a witness, and ended his investigation of the Kochs. By the way, if you were wondering why Democrats didn't complain, well, one did on the committee, Senator Dennis D. Concini, who had been in there, and he told me that the Koch brothers personally threatened him and said, we'll spend whatever money it takes, Senator, to get rid of you if you try to get rid of us. And they did. He got wiped out. And so Democrats saw what would happen. There's more to that story. Bill Clinton was involved in that, but that's back in my book, Billionaires and Ballot Bandits. So you can read the whole thing. I can't give you the whole book. But the important thing is that, you actually had a Republican try to stand up, but then they cut him off at the knees.
Just amazing. I mean, well, not really. I mean, you see that the Republicans really want to make sure that everyone stays in line and doesn't let things like ethics get in the way.
Democrats, too. Bill Clinton was involved in this. Don't forget, we never heard of Bill Clinton. And some of our listeners here may be uncomfortable with this. Who the heck was Bill Clinton? He was just some guy from Dogpatch, Arkansas. How did he become president? He was named chairman of a brand new organization called the Democratic Leadership Council of right-wing Democrats, which was started by $100,000 from a Democrat named David Koch. David Koch was going to run for governor of Kansas as a Democrat. So, the Kochs are not partisan. Right now, they've got their big bucks behind the Republicans because the Republicans are more likely to do their bidding right now. But, you have to understand, they are bipartisan purchasers.
Well, as one other guest I had interviewed on Truthout interviews a few segments ago, as it were, or a few features ago, had said just really about, and this is, I mean, a number of people have said this, but when you have big money spending in politics like that, you're looking at the parties not necessarily as ideological kins to your particular point of view, but rather you look at them as cartels. And you say, okay, I'm going to spend so much on cartel A and cartel B. So if cartel B wins elections, I'll still have power and influence.
Oh, lots. Well, you shape it. In other words, if the Democrats are going to win, it's better to pick their candidate. So the Kochs picked Bill Clinton for us, who was a right-wing Democrat. And as you know, his only two accomplishments in office were ending welfare, cutting back food stamps, and imposing NAFTA. There's no other major accomplishment of his administration.
Oh, the Telecommunications Act, though.
And the Telecommunications Act, I forgot. 3 Republican proposals. Actually, Bill Clinton's, so the Kochs knew exactly what they were doing in blessing Bill Clinton as the best of all possible Democratic candidates, obviously. And by the way, they were giving money at the same time to his opponent, Bob Dole.
Okay, so now let's get to the present. Well, at least to the not so distant past, which is the Citizens United ruling that the Supreme Court ruled on. This opened the floodgates of money into politics, but there was one proviso in the ruling that is problematic for Chris Christie. I'm going to quote you from the Truthout piece. Independent organizations may not, in any way whatsoever, plan with, secretly coordinate with, or make or take suggestions from, nor consult with a candidate. Now, you link to a recording on the Brad blog that proves that Chris Christie was meeting with the Koch brothers, or at least at an organization or a meeting that the Koch brothers were spearheading. Now, the Koch brothers they have an interest in the Keystone pipeline.
That's right.
And Chris Christie, when he went back to New Jersey, and then a few months later, did something that would essentially promote more oil exploration or pave the way for oil interests to have their way. It doesn't necessarily relate to the Keystone Pipeline unless New Jersey has some sort of interest in there. But talk a little bit about this Christie connection, the Koch brothers, and this environmental regulation.
You brought up something very important. There's one law still left to break, and it looks like they may have crossed that line too. That is, a candidate may not talk with any of these social welfare organizations, so-called, like Children's Future or their funders. And what happened was that Chris Christie had a secret, off the agenda, no record, no recording, no witnesses meeting, 2 hours with David Koch in New York. Then Chris Christie flies off secretly, telling no one, not on his schedule, in and out in a day, to Vail, Colorado, to a meeting of billionaires organized by David and Charles Koch in Vail, including Foster Friess, who is the billionaire behind Citizens United. They raised $70 million that night, by the way. And now, again, it is against the law for the candidate to coordinate with these organizations in any way. Now, we do have a secret tape recording of the second meeting, and it looks like it's getting very close to the line, but this is a bigger public meeting. What happened in that secret meeting between David Koch and Chris Christie, which is off the agenda? Why was it off the agenda? There was also a third meeting. Chris Christie went to the Manhattan Institute, headed by Paul the Vulture Singer. Paul the Vulture Singer is the most important funder of the Republican Party. While he's a billionaire, he doesn't have as many billions as the Kochs. No one does. But they listen to him. He's kind of the brains, the Moriarty of the Republican Party, big donors. The billionaires defer to him. He's the guy who's behind Restore Our Children's Future. He got David and Charles Koch into the room with their estranged brother, Billy Koch. They don't get along, the Kochs. And all of them, all these billionaires got together, decided that they were going to back Chris Christie. That I have the information on. That's for certain. What we don't know is the exact discussions that were happening in secret when Christie went to the Manhattan Institute, where Paul Singer is, where he had the secret meetings with David Koch. And obviously we don't know anything that wasn't at the kind of public dinner table. When I say public, no one was supposed to know about it, but, you know, Christie, being a former prosecutor, is not as dumb as Mitt Romney, thinking that there's always that chance it will get out, and of course it did. So what we need to do, I mean, it looks, because Committee for Our Children's Future, First of all, that's a deceptive front. It's one thing to say, we don't know where this money comes from. It's another thing to lie about it. They can say they don't know, but it looks like there's a fraud committed here because those old chums don't have $6 million for Chris Christie. The billionaires do. The billionaires are secretly meeting with him. The billionaires, and by the way, the organization, Committee for Our Children's Future, the only contact you have is the same person you contact for Paul the Vulture Singers and Billy Koch's organization, Restore Our Future. So it's one operation. I want to know exactly what happened in that meeting with David Koch and Chris Christie. That's where the subpoena should be dropped, not the Port Authority. Well, it was pretty creepy, and it's a criminal act, but nevertheless, this is the real big stuff.
I think the traffic gridlock story is much more easy to cover because it affects more and more people. And they're like, yeah, I was stuck in traffic. The money stories can be somewhat more complex, but you've done a great job in breaking it down in a very, we're going to follow it. Here's A, here's B to C to D. And this is the chain of what happened. So I think that that's one thing that when I read your pieces, it excels in, is that it really does break it down in a way that really anyone can follow the money.
That's probably why my reports appear in America only on Truthout, when in the rest of the world they appear in The Guardian and on BBC television. People say, I'm not mainstream. Yeah, I am the mainstream. I'm the world's mainstream. BBC and The Guardian are the mainstream. But here in America, and I thank Truthout for, basically bringing me through, sneaking me through the electronic Berlin Wall in America. This is very important. This is really, understand, I put this at the top of the nightly news in Britain and in Europe and the rest of the world, but here you're going to get it only on Truthout. So I really appreciate you bringing my stories back home, and obviously I want people to, read the book until Patriot 3 you're allowed to, and you can also watch the film until the NSA decides to, just cut the switch.
Greg, I want to thank you so much for being on Truthout Interviews.
You're very welcome, and thanks to Truthout for giving me the opportunity.
And thank you for watching Truthout Interviews. We'll see you next time. I'm Ted Asregadoo.